Hi, my name is Kendall Deacon Davis. I am an advisor with Kowloon Nights, and I'm going to give a talk that's going to give you a little bit of context around who Kowloon Nights is. We also have something called the Fairchild Initiative, which is a diversity endeavor targeted at Black developers, helping to widen access to project financing, to the opportunity to pitch a project, the opportunity to get feedback on a project, and we're really excited about it. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But let's first of all talk about who Kowloon Nights is. Some people in the indie community and in the development community know who we are. For anyone who doesn't, Kowloon is a global games fund, so we have a team distributed around the world, and we are dedicated to enabling independent game developers. So what does that mean? We exist as a place for project financing outside of publishers. So that means that normally publishing and funding have been tightly coupled in the history of the industry, and that creates a very inequitable relationship for the developer, for the studio, as they're trying to get a game made. They don't have much leverage. So we want to tilt the playing field, and we want to tilt the very context of how funding happens for games. So what that means is we are focused on empowering the developer. Number one, we want to look for really strong creative visions with distinct style and a distinct voice, and we want to empower those people. So the mechanism by which we try to empower developers is we have finance that is essentially tailored to the unique needs of each studio. So that means that when a developer signs with Kowloon, they could choose to self-publish, they could choose to sign with a publisher, and they could even seek additional funding from other sources if necessary. So that might be something like a platform deal with Xbox or Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation and down the line. But I think what makes us unique is our true dedication to empowering developers, and I don't think anyone would disagree with the fact that developers are at their best when they have the freedom and the funding to realize their creations. And so the things that they have fought and thought for hours on end, the late nights and the sweat and the blood and the tears that go into making this, they need the freedom in order to actually bring all that stuff to fruition and bring it to market and have something that's really gonna delight players. So for us, what this means is it means being hands off during development. It means letting the creator capture the spotlight. For instance, you'll never see us listed in Steam, and there's a specific reason for that, because this is about the developer, the studio, and the project that they're making and the game that they're making. And we believe that we should stand aside and just let the developers shine. And lastly, a big part of this is offering fair terms. So we don't own the IP when we do a deal. We actually believe it's very important that the developer retains control of the project IP, because what's good for the project that we're investing in and what's good for the studio that's making the project that we're investing in, that is going to be good for us at the end of the day. Again, it all reverts back to this idea of empowering developers. So when we do a deal, for instance, we offer a very straightforward revenue share that has a developer earning revenue on day one once the project is at market. And that's something that's incredibly important to us. It's so important to us, primarily because if we do our part on the funding, the financing, and everything that we can control to give developers freedom, then they're going to have a really good shot at bringing a unique vision to life. And that's the point of Kowloon, and that's our mission. And I think we're all really excited when we get to work on this. We have a really diverse team, and it's something that's diversity in terms of demographic, in terms of background as well. Part of our founding team has a background in game development. Some have a background in business development. Some of our team are extremely experienced in scouting titles. Some of us, like me, I didn't have any experience doing that sort of stuff, but I do have a deep background in AAA development, and so all of us bring a very specific and unique lens towards looking at titles. We look at titles every week, and we make very much a group decision on titles that warrant further examination and diligence. And again, like I said, our team is globally distributed across the United States and Europe and Asia. And with that unique mix, we have a really, I can't say it enough, we have a really, really amazing and strong team. And, over the course of our discussions about games, about specific titles, it really comes out. And I think that's a really big strength for us. One thing for us that's pretty key is that we are not a publisher. So what this means is that when we receive pitches and we are evaluating them, we evaluate anywhere from 5 to 8 titles each week. We have a pretty deep pipeline of stuff that we look through. When we are evaluating a title, the developer needs to either be open to working with a publisher later in the game's development cycle. It's not necessary day one, obviously, but that either needs to be in place or it needs to be part of the project budget, what the developer needs in order to self-publish the project. We don't have the staff to do publishing support. We don't have the staff to do marketing. We're happy to connect our developers with the people they need from a PR, from a marketing standpoint. We're also able to make lots of recommendations because of how deeply connected our team is. But again, we are not a publisher. And so it's a discussion that does need to be clear from the outset of a title. And, when we're looking at budgets, and if you're thinking about bringing a project to Kowloon, think really closely and carefully around, am I going to want a publisher for this title? Am I going to want to publish this in-house? And then think through the ramifications of, if you say you want to publish in-house, if you want to self-publish, what are you going to need? Who are you going to hire? That, of course, is going to affect what your budget is. So hopefully that gives you somewhat of an overview of who Kowloon is. Like I said, we are a global games fund. We are independent. We're not connected to any publishers. We exist as a place where developers can go to receive funding and receive project financing that is outside of the traditional developer-publisher relationship. And we really believe that that's a formula and a pathway that's going to create better games. One thing that we've been asked a lot is, well, what types of games are you looking for? What type of game should I pitch to Kowloon Nights? And the honest answer is that at the end of the day, we love games of all genres, and our team has a really amazing breadth of taste. And one common aspect of all the games that we funded is that we're looking for creators with an incredibly strong creative voice. Normally we gravitate towards projects that have really strong art direction as well, innovative mechanics, and really exceptional execution. Now, exceptional execution does not need to mean AAA level stuff. It doesn't mean that you need to be thinking about a really expensive game. Execution simply means that if you have an idea about something that's going to be fun, that's going to be unique, that's going to be interesting for players to play for reasons X, Y, or Z, that you can focus your development process and your iteration process and your design to actually bring that to life in software. That's all it means. And so that can mean a team of 1 or 2 working on a very small scope game with a very unique focus, and it can mean for a team of 20 or 30 that it means the same thing. But the execution combined with a strong creative voice, that's what we're looking for, and ultimately that's what good business is within this industry, which is a content-driven industry where players are always looking for something that's both incredibly polished and also new and novel. I think a game that exemplifies this that we funded is Spiritfarer by Thunder Lotus, and I just have to take a moment to extend just the most sincere and the biggest congratulations to the team for the response that the game has received since launching. It's an incredibly original, unique, and wonderful and heartwarming. And I mean, I could go on with the superlatives, but the team at Thunder Lotus have really, really, really executed and really delivered something amazing. And I hope anyone who's watching this talk has a chance to play it. So Spiritfarer is something that Kowloon Nights has played a role in funding, and it's done really well. And you can see everything about the game from the trailer, the art style, the subject matter, the voice. That's something we gravitate towards. Another title that's been released that's been successful for us is the Darwin Project. And then we have a lot of to be announced and to be released games in our portfolio. We actually have a really large portfolio at this point, and it's continuing to grow. We're continuing to be excited about other titles. Some, you might have seen Godfall by Counterplay, The Red Lantern by Timberline Games, Elk by Triple Topping, Garden Story, 9 to 5. So you have everything from melee-driven action to atmospheric horror to first-person story-driven to social sim and adventure. Everything from unique and charming art styles to really intense, really intense action and very mature, almost nearly AAA presentation. So it runs the breadth, and like I said, the real connective tissue and the real through line within all of that is, again, the strong creative voice. Number one, that's the ember, that's the kernel around which a project is going to be built. And then from there, execution across the different disciplines: art, design, audio, sound, and then the execution. All the games that I mentioned, the ones that are out, the ones that are going to be released, we're immensely proud of the developers and how they've executed. And that's the most important thing. And that's when we're looking at titles and evaluating them, that's also what we're trying to reverse engineer backwards, is how is the team going to be able to deliver this vision? And even if it's a stretch, even if it's really ambitious, do we see a pathway for that to happen? So hopefully that gives everyone an idea of the types of games that Kowloon funds. Like I said, the easy answer is it's everything under the sun. So many different types of games, but there is a through line there. We're incredibly proud of the developers that we funded, and over the coming months, we're going to announce more about what we funded, and you'll see those developers showcasing their games, and hopefully everyone will go out and play them. So hopefully that's a good overview of Kowloon Nights, who we are, what we do, what we look for, what we fund. We'll give a little bit more context as I get into the Fairchild Initiative component, and I'm going to dive into that right now. So diversity has always been an implicit goal for Kowloon Nights. The makeup of our team is diverse. The teams that we fund are diverse. It's something that we've always been looking for, because we believe that the more diverse voices that are supported, the more interesting titles get made. Number one, that is going to mean, I think, just better games that get released, period. But also what it's going to mean is it's going to start shifting the subject matter, the tone, the types of representation that we see within the industry. And that's really important. And it's a mission that everyone on our team holds incredibly near and dear. Our ultimate goal in terms of diversity is to support even more diverse studios. We want to invest in projects that will lead to studios being created and those studios having demonstrable, sustainable success. And what this means with respect to the Fairchild Initiative is it means that it's not an, and everyone has a different definition of success, by the way, and it's important to have a definition of success, because without a definition of what success looks like, how can you march your way towards that? How can you course correct? How can you take your temperature, check the wind, and understand what direction you're headed in. So for us, it was very important to define what our goal is, and the Fairchild Initiative, which is specifically for Black creators. It kind of comes from my own experiences as a developer. So I have been in the industry for 10 years. I've worked as a near designer on Halo, and a systems designer as well. I was at Telltale Games and worked on stuff like The Wolf Among Us and Walking Dead Season 2. Ultimately, for me, my path very quickly became, okay, I need to start a studio. And when I began to embark on that journey, there were so many barriers and so many things that I started to encounter. And for example, you prepare and prepare and prepare on your pitch, on getting your team together, getting your demo together, and you're meeting with publishers, and you're preparing and making sure you can articulate what your vision is, and then you're getting told no, and then you're seeing other titles get picked up, and you're wondering, well, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And whether it is true or not, you begin to wonder, well, what's the only other thing that's different about me? I know the color of my skin is different, and I know that no matter how many times I've prepared and done all the right things, sometimes it hasn't added up. And well, that's my own subjective experience. And then if you start to connect that to data that we know about project financing in general, across whether it's games, venture capital, all those things. You look at the makeup in the industry, you look at the makeup of people who are holding the keys to capital, and there is obviously a problem going on. And so that's where the Fairchild Initiative comes from, is number one, being a place where developers who are doing the right things, who are well prepared, and simply meeting headwinds and trying to make that leap. That's where the Fairchild Initiative, I think, can play a strong role. So that's kind of step number one. And step number two is saying, okay, once we have identified some of those creators, once we've looked at those different projects, how do we create sustainable success for those studios? And again, I will continue to come back to this term of demonstrable, sustainable success, because it's not enough to us to just get a good game out. What we want is a good game to result in a studio being built and a culture of diversity, an amazing creative culture that can hire in interesting, diverse people, and that can grow over time. That's really what it means for us. So it's aspirational. It's not something we're going to hit tomorrow, but that is the lens through which we're looking at things. The goal is that we're striving for is to identify the right teams, identify the right creators, to work closely with them, and to create a roadmap that's going to lead to the type of success that I just described. We believe that successful studios led by Black creators are going to have hiring practices and culture and environment that does help to tilt the scales in terms of the industry's demographic makeup. That's really, I can't say it any better than that. That's really why the Fairchild Initiative exists, and hopefully what we're doing is we're expanding the signal out to developers, whether it's an independent game developer or it's someone working at a AAA studio who has always thought of starting his or her own studio and has wanted to make that leap but doesn't know how. The Fairchild Initiative exists to say, hey, we are here for that reason. Talk to us, tell us your ideas, and let's see if something can happen. We've been asked for the Fairchild Initiative hey, you're offering $2 million for the Fairchild Initiative, which, by the way, I guess I should have said, the Fairchild Initiative is a $2 million allocation of our fund, and that is dedicated towards finding Black creators, Black owned and Black led studios, and then trying to go down the path that I just laid out. So with respect to that, we've been asked, hey, you've got the funding. Are you providing infrastructure and mentorship? Because there are sometimes gaps that need to be filled because of issues of access to education, access to opportunity that will prepare you in order to have the right background and the right skill set in order to make a great game. So while we are not a publisher, we can work behind the scenes to help developers reach success. So, for instance, if we found a team that is a candidate for investment, that means we're invested in that team's success. So if there are gaps in skill sets, whether it's on the production discipline, the design discipline, anything like that, we would hate for those gaps to hinder the success of a project that we found that we really believed in. So in this light, for some Fairchild applicants, it's going to be very possible for us to envision working closely with those teams in an advisory capacity. And what that will mean is it's going to mean different things for each title, but we will be, our whole team will be ready, available, and willing to help fill in some of those gaps, to help make suggestions, to give advice, all the things that a developer might need in order to get a game across the finish line, in order to release a good game, a game that's received well by players, and that will lead to the building of a sustainably successful studio. And another thing that we've been asked is, well, what are you looking for in applicants? What is a successful that's a mouthful. What does a successful applicant look like? Above all, what we are looking for in applicants is a strong creative voice. I mentioned that kind of at the top of this talk. That strong creative voice is the ember. It's the kernel around which everything else is built. A successful game, a successful studio, a successful culture. Beyond that, we're looking for teams that have a strong idea of what they're making. This is something that a developer can and a studio can focus on even before funding, is having a good idea of what they want to make. And it's something that really will ensure success down the line. It won't do anyone any good to give money to something that doesn't have the creative vision fully thought through. Mainly because if you're building the creative vision on the fly after you've taken the funds, then it's going to be incredibly difficult to get to the finish line. And again, success is the goal, success of the title, success of the studio. So we believe that foundation really has to be in place of a team that has a strong idea of what they're making. And we hold a lot of what we're looking at to the same standard from that perspective as everything else, because that's a through line and a constant that just really has to be there in order for a game to be successful. And there are other things that we are in our project evaluation that we are willing to be flexible with and willing to really kind of learn from as we get more and more Fairchild pitches of what we need to be looking at, what we need to be focusing on. But really, a team that knows what it's making is going to be the best indicator of success, and those are the teams that we're looking for, very, very much so. The current application process for the Fairchild Initiative, it's very simple. There's an email address called fairchild@kowloonnights.com. And what we look for a team that wants to submit a game is we look for a pitch deck, anything that will give us an overview of the design. We look at a production schedule and a budget. I mean, without those three things, it's really hard to evaluate what a title is, what its market potential is going to be, so on and so forth. But those are the main things that we wind up looking for. And then outside of that, it's very helpful when there's a prototype, because if a picture's worth 1,000 words, then what is a prototype worth? It really helps to convey what the developer is trying to make, even if it's rudimentary, even if there are rough edges. That's really, really, really important. So again, right, to apply to the Fairchild Initiative, Fairchild at KowloonNights.com, and make sure that you have your pitch deck, your budget, your schedule, and if possible, a demo. And that's really kind of the overview of Kowloon Nights and the Fairchild Initiative. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is Ken from Santa. It means Kendall from Santa Monica. It's a long story, but Ken from Santa is my Twitter handle. You can email Fairchild at KowloonNights.com, and we'd be happy to take a look at a project. Any way that we get connected to developers who are candidates for the Fairchild Initiative is great for us. And that's the main focus, is to find developers who are really strong candidates for making a great game, for building a great studio. And I can't say it enough that this is something that really, really, really means a lot to me in particular, because I've been down this road. I know how difficult it is. I know that if something like the Fairchild Initiative had existed 3 or 4 years ago, it would have been amazing for me. So what we're hoping to do is to help enable developers, Black developers, to take a strong step forward. And the more of those steps that get taken, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And each step that gets taken that starts to change the makeup of the world is something that we really, really believe in. And the Fairchild Initiative is our first step there. So my name is Kendall Deacon Davis. I'm an advisor for Kowloon Nights. Thanks so much for the pleasure of being able to share a little bit about what we do. And I'll see you guys out there.